Hello folks, this is the first video in a new unit that we're just about to move into, which is fairly exciting. It's actually what is called graphical user interface programming. Now what do I mean by that? Well, all the stuff that we've been doing up to this point in the course has been console based, meaning the user is always going into a console and typing text into a console, and any outputs that we show to the user are being displayed in a console as text. After these next couple of videos, what we're going to be able to start doing is to actually give our user a graphical experience. Now, what do I mean by graphical experience? I mean, instead of the console, we have a nice little window pop up, and inside that window will be what is known as a form, and on that form will be things like buttons and drop-down lists and text boxes and graphics. So it gives our users a far richer experience, and honestly, a far more common experience in this day and age. So this is just the beginnings of doing that. Now, in order to get this all to work, however, there's a little bit of initial setup that we're going to have to do with a couple of configurations. So what we're going to end up having to do here is, this is all done through Visual Studio Code. So yes, you need to already have Visual Studio Code installed, and yes, you need to already have Python 3 installed, but if you don't have those installed by this point in the course, I don't know what to say. So in Visual Studio Code, here's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to install a new extension, which I'll just show you in a minute here. We're actually going to have to use from the command prompt, a package installer that's already in Visual Studio Code, which allows me to install a couple of setup packages, and then we just have to do a couple of configuration settings in Visual Studio Code. So let's jump into VS Code and get started. Once we're in Visual Studio Code, here's where we're going to start. We're actually going to come over here and go to the Extensions tab down the left-hand side here. And you can see at the beginning of the course we actually installed Python. This time we're actually going to find something new. So we're going to type in PyQt, so PYQT. And you can see what we're actually looking for here is an extension called PyQt Integration by an author called Feng Zhu. Now we're going to click on Install. That just takes a few seconds. There's some documentation here if you're interested in some of the things that this is capable of or what it will look like. Once we're actually done installing this, we actually also have to click the Reload button, which will install Visual Studio Code. Let me just close my workspace pop-up here, and you can see this is now installed. So that's step one, successfully completed. Now for step two, what we're actually going to do is we're going to open up a terminal, which is actually slightly different from the console where we have our program inputs and outputs going. So a Python terminal we can get to through the terminal menu up at the top here, and we click on where it says New Terminal, and it opens up this terminal. Now, in a terminal, the difference is this is a live terminal that interacts with our Python installation, and you can actually put in a whole bunch of Python commands, meaning things that configure Python itself. Now, one of these is known as pip3. And what pip3 is, it's an installation program. And so, kind of like my extension manager that we have here, it's just I'm doing it through the command line. Essentially, anything that I want to install that has to do with Python 3, I can use pip to install pretty much anything out there. I just need to know what it is and what it's called, and then I could just use a couple of simple commands to install these things. Now, in order to proceed here, there's something that I just wanted to point out here, which is you have to know where Python 3 was actually installed on your PC. Now, at the college, it's already installed for you, but here's where I'll just copy and paste the path in here, just so we know where we're talking about on the college PC, because we need it for a setting. So the path you're seeing here that I've just pasted in here is the path to where Python 3.6 is actually installed on the college PCs. So under the program files x86 folder in a subfolder called Python 36-32. If you're going to install this, or you're working on your own laptop or at home, this will be a different path. So you just need to go on your own PC, figure out where it was that you actually installed Python, back in like week 1 or 2 when we actually did this initially, and you need to find where that path is. Now, just for purpose of illustration, on my home PC where I'm recording this video, this is the path where I installed Python. So you can see it's a different path, but this is the folder where I actually have all my Python class libraries and the Python executable itself and stuff. So just take note of those paths, but again, if you're on your own PC, you need to find out where this path is, because we need it for a couple of settings, and we need to see where it is that we're actually installing things. So the pip installer program that we're actually going to run here, the way that we run this, you just need to know what the name of the packages are that you actually want to install. And the two that we're going to install, there's one called PyQt5 itself, and the second one is called PYQT5-Tools. That will give us everything we need. So the syntax that we need to type in here, and since you're following along, please do this as well. At the terminal, you type in pip3, all is one word, PIP3, a space, then in the word install, and then the first package we're going to install here is called PyQt5. So PYQT5, all is one word. When I click on that and install it, you'll notice, you'll see it loading up. I've already installed this on this PC, just as a little test, so I get a message saying, hey, this is already installed. You, as you're listening to this, should actually be seeing it just to go through and install. You can just ignore this pip version message here. Don't worry about that. You don't need to worry about upgrading pip itself. If you are installing this at home, here's an additional step that you need to take as well as installing PyQt5. By the way, as I mentioned, this is already installed on the college computers, so you don't need to do this part. But if you're installing at home, you also need to run pip again on something. So you say pip3 install, and the package that we're getting this time is called PYQT5-Tools. And I have already installed this one again as well, but what that actually will do for you is go in and install the second package. Now, where did this get installed on your PC? It got installed into a subfolder in your Python installation directory, which is why I was saying on your home PC you need to know where this thing is. So let me just pull up my directory so I can show you what just got installed. Here's my, in Windows Explorer, here's my Python installation directory that I have, and you'll notice there's a bunch of folders in here and stuff. If you went digging in here, this is where all the actual Python framework and the stuff we're actually running off our code, it's all in here. Here's the Python executable that we run every time that we actually execute one of our programs. But I'd like you to bring your attention to this folder here called lib, which is short for library. And this, if we go into this folder, you can see there's a whole bunch of stuff in here. The one that I'd like you to now direct your attention to here is called Site Packages. Basically, all the packages that are installed by pip, pretty much all of them go in here. So we're going to go into our Site Packages folder. So we're in Python installation directory, lib, Site Packages. And under here, you can now see we have a folder called PyQt5. That was our first install that we did. And we have another folder called PyQt5-Tools. Now, all the stuff for PyQt5 that we need is in there, but really we don't need to go in there and see what's in there. But I do want to point out one thing under PyQt5-Tools, which is when we go in here, there's a file here called designer.exe. So if you were, for some reason, going to manually run Qt Designer, which is the actual UI file that we have, the UI program that we're actually going to be using, you could go in here and double-click it and it would come up. However, what we're going to do, I'm going to show you how to set this up as a configuration in Visual Studio Code itself, so that you can just, through the Visual Studio Code interface, you can just actually click on your files and just run a couple of commands directly out of here, so you don't have to go digging through files and finding all this stuff and making shortcuts. So if you're in this directory, if you're on your home PC, please go in and find this Python directory, lib, site packages, PyQt5-Tools. And what I'd like you to do is just click in the bar up here and copy that. So put that on your clipboard so we have it when we go to do a setting here. Next place we're going is we're going to have to go into Visual Studio Code's settings file. So the easiest way to do that is just to go to the File menu and choose Preferences, Settings. And the file, the one that we're actually going to look for here is called Qt Designer. And there's only one of them, so you just have to type in Qt Designer. It's actually called Qt Designer :path. And what it's saying is, hey, what is the path of the Qt Designer exe file? So in here is where I'm going to paste in my path here, and at the end of it, I'm going to say /designer.exe. And what that's matching is, that's saying at this folder location, run this designer.exe file. So the name of the executable itself and the path have to exactly match, because this is where we're saying, hey, Visual Studio Code, this is where you find this when I say I want you to run Qt Designer. So once you do that, just hit enter on it, and then go out. That should automatically save, and we now have this as part of our settings. Again, you might start tripping up a little bit with if you're running things at home and also on the lab PCs. So you should know, you might have to change this setting a couple of times if you're working at home, one time, and then at school another time. So just be aware of where to find this thing. You can come back to the video and reference that if you need to. Now, last but not least, what all of this has allowed me to do is now I actually have a new item in my context menu. Now, so if you can see I've made a folder here called GUI, where I'm going to put all of my graphical programs. I recommend that you also make your own GUI folder under your main repo directory here, just because these will look a little bit different from our previous programs. But now if I right-click on a folder where I want to create a new file, I get a new option in my right-click context menu here called PyQt:"new form." Now, this will be the subject of the next video, but essentially, if I click on that, if I got that path right, whoops, I guess I didn't. 1 second. Oh, actually, I know what happened here. If you notice, the path that's actually showing here is, if you look really closely, it's that's the college one. So I happen to have multiple settings files set up under my repository, and so it's just talking to the wrong one here. So let's see which one it is here. So I want to do, this is the one where, oh, this is my file, and this is the setting that should have been set. Essentially what happens if you have multiple settings files, they override each other. So I think this is the right one. Hopefully you don't need to do this. But if I come in here now, what does not like about that? Oh, I think I need the double slashes. Double slashes. This just means for literal characters. Whoops. Did I get them all? Not quite. And there. And of course I need a comma at the end. Oh, it's still saying it doesn't like it. Let's see what's going on here. Will it like it? No, it doesn't. Well, that's a pain in the butt. My apologies for that. I just figured out what was wrong. When we went in and looked for Qt Designer in our file settings section here, you'll notice there's actually two tabs here. I have played around with having a workspace settings one as well. When I told you to do this initially in this, I had you put it into user settings. Now, if you have also created a second settings file for workspace, one of these overrides the other. So I didn't actually have the path copied into workspace settings. So if you want to be safe, or if you're having problems, just take the exact same string and copy and paste it into both of these under user settings and under workspace settings. So just to finish this off again, what this allows me to do once I actually have the path fine, then if I go to my folder here, I get my new option which says PyQt:"new form." When I click on that, it opens up that designer.exe, and this is actually Qt Designer, the program here. Now, more on this in a little while in the next video, but basically if you've gotten this far, then everything is set up just fine. If you are having problems with that setting, like you just saw me have for a second, you can always run Qt Designer manually through, just even as a temporary measure, just by browsing to that folder we saw under my Python install, and just clicking on that designer.exe. Obviously, it's a lot nicer if you can get this properly integrated into VS Code, but just as a temporary measure, if you want to start playing around with this, but you're having some setup problems, as long as the 2 pip install commands worked, then you have all the files that you need. So, on to the next video.